A Star is Born is a pretty good movie directed by Bradley Cooper, his directorial debut, actually, and it stars himself and Lady Gaga. Yes, you heard that correctly. I said it's pretty good. You might be upset right now, seeing as how the title says I didn't love it, but I didn't love it. And saying I didn't love it doesn't mean that I hated it, and if you disagree, then I guess you're a Sith. There is a lot to love about this movie. The intimate chemistry between really everyone in this movie, but particularly our two leads, and the way the camera embraces this intimacy. The authentic and complex relationships that have their fair share of issues to work out, but are still wholesome in their own way. This is a film that shines directorially, not because of any sort of stylistic standout, but because of Cooper's decisions to let certain emotional beats play out. He's more of the conductor here than anything, and it's really impressive. All the characters are fully realized, and they each have so much more humanity to them than the trailer hinted at. Again, I liked this movie, but it has its issues. Or rather, I have my issues with it. And that's an important distinction to make. But that's why I didn't love it overall. The ending of this movie is incredibly powerful. It's a moment that actually feels earned, unlike many other movies that end in suicide. This was the logical conclusion of the film. But I do think that this powerful ending makes it easy to forget some of the film's earlier shortcomings, particularly in the middle section. The film is juggling a lot of different things. Allie's La La Land style popification, Jack's alcoholism as a single issue, but also his backstory with his dad and his brother that are probably the root of this alcoholism, their marriage, and the film embraces the ambiguity of a lot of these issues, which is nice. They accept that marriage has its issues and people forgive each other. Jack and Bobby come to terms with the fact that their upbringing was problematic and that all they can do to move forward is just live with the situation. And Allie accepts the fact that in order to be successful, she'll have to sell out a little bit. However, the middle portion of this film is totally stagnant. These issues are there, and the characters live with them, but they don't develop in any sort of way at all. Jack tells Allie that she's become what she hates, a la 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 Land, but the only thing that becomes of that conversation is that Jack apologizes for calling her ugly. Once she becomes famous, she doesn't question the nature of her fame. In the end, her hair is dark again, but that's not really an indicator that she's abandoned this pop image of herself. She goes from despising it and calling off the dancers to fully embracing it pretty quickly. Jack's alcoholism also doesn't really evolve until the Grammys scene. It's kind of at the same level for most of the film, and people are pretty much okay with it. They're like, yeah, that's just him. And then out of nowhere, it's too much and suddenly he needs rehab. Like, it had been pretty bad for a while, and no one did anything. And it was only when he pissed himself in public that they decided he needed help. And, I mean, yeah, that's a pretty good indicator that someone needs help, but there were several other indicators before that, and it just makes all the characters' line of reasoning in that respect a little hard to figure out, but not necessarily in a good way. I will add, though it's a bit irrelevant, that the Grammys incident only would have made both of them more popular. It would have had very little negative impact on their careers. I mean, just look at Kanye. The tension between Jack and Bobby played out pretty well, but it all just felt kind of inconsequential. And there was a moment where I was sitting there and I was just thinking, what is the point of anything I'm watching? And eventually the film went somewhere, but it took its time, and that section just kind of felt like a chore to watch. I also found it a little silly how they portrayed Allie's rise to fame. Every time there was a moment that was like, you're gonna perform on SNL with Alec Baldwin hosting, or you've just been nominated for 3 Grammys, it kind of felt like, and I hate to say it, it felt like a Disney Channel original movie about a kid becoming a celebrity. Obviously, I'm not in the music industry. I don't know how these things play out, but the rest of the movie is so grounded, and this stuff just feels a little cartoonish. And maybe this is how those things actually do play out, but if that's the case, then this is an instance of something in real life being cheesier on screen than some other less realistic way to portray it. Because real life can be pretty corny. And as powerful as the ending is, I can't help but feel like its impact is dampened by the memorial service. I get that this is a musical and they have to have some final number, but every song before this had a purpose, and this song is just Allie mourning, which they already showed before the performance. Obviously, we can't judge a film based on what they could have done instead, and that's not what I'm doing here, but I will say that it probably would have been a little more powerful if the final performance of the film was Allie's last performance of Shallow at that concert. But that's not my problem with the memorial service. My problem is that this cheesy kind of song and showing clips from earlier in the movie of the two of them being happy, it felt like the movie was straight up telling me to cry when the situation was already emotional enough without this seeming command from the movie. It's redundant. This is exactly the kind of manipulation, or failure to manipulate, that I was talking about a couple videos ago. All that being said, this movie is still way better than it had any right to be. The La La Land comparisons are inevitable, but this is very much its own beast. Any connection to La La Land is pure coincidence. Probably. I haven't seen any of the previous renditions of A Star is Born, but something tells me that they're probably not as good as this one. Really impressive debut from Cooper, and Lady Gaga is great in this role, totally different from any of her previous acting work. I expect nominations for both of them, at least. And she's such a fascinating casting choice considering her background in pop and what the movie says about pop music, even though in real life she was certainly more than just a generic pop star. I'm giving this film a 7 out of 10, and once again I find myself in the position where I feel like I hated the movie just because of how much everyone else loved it, making my 7 feel way lower. I think now might be a good time to talk about this sort of video, why I didn't love blank. A lot of you watched this video just because you wanted to hear what I had to say about this movie, but I'm sure a number of you saw the title saying I didn't love a movie that you loved, and you wanted to find out why. This calls to mind a few years ago when this video was gaining a lot of traction on YouTube, and I think it's a little silly. This format acts like it's this incredibly hot take to not absolutely adore a movie. Such a hot take, in fact, that it warrants making an entire video about it. And I'm not sure if this is a problem with the video or those kinds of videos themselves, or if these videos are just capitalizing on a larger problem. For me, it certainly feels like I'm just using the format to rake in views, which I desperately need. I'm kind of exploiting here. Sorry. We're all just very insecure about our opinions of art, and that's been the overarching issue in film discourse for the past however many years. Kind of the foundational issue of this channel. But let's just constantly remind ourselves not only that someone can dislike a movie that you liked, and that that's totally fine, but also that not thinking a movie is a masterpiece can still mean that someone liked the movie. Things are way too polarized right now, and I think we all just need that constant reminder. I'm gonna go now. Just know that I would certainly not decline if you ask to be a patron on my Patreon. So there's a link in the description. Go pledge some money. Could always use some more money, some more. Okay, whatever. Okay, bye.